guys. Looks like 2 are on the zone, 2 on security.
Security first. I'll take left, you take right.
I'm good.
On mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. 2, 1, mark.
Bots.
What is the role of a designated marksman for an average individual, the common citizen? With the cost equipment associated with a sniper, what kind of barrier to entry is there for someone becoming a sniper? And is a DM really just a sniper? Well, we can do a lot of research on our own and ask some of these questions, but none of it is nearly as good as having an SME or subject matter expert on the channel. So Jonathan, that's why you're here today. Thanks so much for being here, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I know that snipers typically have a range to own between, let's say, 300 to 1,200 yards or meters if you're in the military. And often they're shooting not just at infantry, but also vehicles as well. Yeah. Does that apply to the DM role?
No, not necessarily. The DM role is much more of a mix between the rifleman and a sniper. Takes some of the responsibilities like long-range observations and precision fire that you get from a sniper, but at the same time you have to balance that with still being a capable rifleman within your squad or team.
Okay, so I know that also the average infantryman, they're typically training and taking shots or engaging at roughly, is it like 500-ish yards?
Yeah, somewhere between you're between 0 and either 300 or 500. Just depending on the competence level of the unit.
Okay, so the DM or designated marksman role is really merging these two, it sounds like, between a rifleman who is still competent and effective from 0 out to 3 to 5, depending on the weapon system they have, but you're accurizing it and you're tying in some tools that can take you further out. So what range would you say a DM would be responsible for?
So in my opinion, and in the Army's opinion as well, it's about 700 yards and in. Okay. Is what the DM is responsible for. So as opposed to the normal rifleman who can engage a man-sized target, let's say, at 400 yards, the DM is expected to make a precision shot at that range.
Cool.
And then make those engagements farther out as well, out to about 700.
Okay. So you mentioned that you still have the role of being a rifleman, but before we get into the equipment that is often associated with not a sniper, a DM, let's talk about the roles and responsibilities that make the DM unique. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Cool. All right, Jonathan, so if every DM is still supposed to be a rifleman, what are the capabilities that a DM actually does that bring different assets to their team or to their squad?
So the number one thing that the DM can bring to a team is observation. The ability to have more information than your enemy and to be able to make decisions based off that information is more valuable to winning fights and staying alive than any amount of gunfighting that you can do.
What kind of information are you gathering, and then what are people doing with that information? Like, what are you looking for, and what are you observing, and how does it affect what people do? Because that's a bold statement.
So let's take a look at an example. Let's say you're trying to defend an area, like maybe your homestead, your camp, wherever you're at. If you have your DMs out and they're observing, and they observe a potential enemy force or someone who looks sketchy coming towards your group, knowing how many people there are, what equipment they have on them, what their capabilities might be, might dictate whether you decide to try to avoid that group or whether you decide that you can take that group. And if you don't have that information, making the wrong decision can lead to you and your entire your group, unit, family, whatever, being completely wiped out if you make a bad decision. So having that intelligence and having that observation is absolutely crucial to keeping yourself alive and keeping your group safe. The next thing that's crucial to the role of a DM is being able to deliver accurate precision fire. As a DM, you may be responsible for initiating an ambush, taking out key personnel within a group that you may be attacking or defending yourself from. So your margin for error is very small, and you are going to be relied upon to hit the thing that you're shooting at. So being able to accurately engage out to 700 yards, achieving first round hits is exceptionally important in a DM role.
Also, I know a lot of people are concerned about like precision fire and what are you actually doing with these accurized rifles? Well, if you're going to be spending time getting really effective with an accurized system like an AR or whatever it is you're shooting, man, if something weird happens, it's going to make you a better and more lethal hunter to put food on the table for your family as well. So in regards to precision fire, this also can go beyond like a wartime conflict as well.
Also keep in mind, if you're shooting a carbine style rifle, generally in 5.56, you need to be capable as well as follow-up shots and rapid re-engagements. So not just the fancy gear and the fancy rifles, but your fundamentals when it comes to things like stability and natural point of aim, things like that. All the fundamental skills that you need to build also need to be absolutely on point to fulfill this role in an effective way.
All right, so we have observation and accurized fire, better than the average infantryman. What else does a DM do that sets them apart?
So the next major thing I would say is camouflage and concealment. This is where you are riding that middle line between what a rifleman has as far as camouflage, maybe just a uniform, and a full-on sniper where you're all ghillied up and you have all that specialty equipment that's pretty bulky and heavy to carry around for a very specialized task. So in the modern battlefield, it's super important that you be camouflaged and concealed from your enemy. You're going to be separated from your main element. A lot of the times as a DM, you're going to be pushed out to provide observation. So you need to be able to stay hidden and stay out of sight. And you need to also balance that with maneuverability so that you can pack everything back down to function as a rifleman again. The last thing I'll say when it comes to the capabilities of a DM is actually just going back to being a rifleman. You still have to be capable of being a rifleman in a squad. So that's all your basic responsibilities and tasks: patrolling, the basics of CQB, comms, your sustainment. The DM is not a replacement for any of those responsibilities. The DM is an additional responsibility on top of everything else that you're doing as a rifleman.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, and this is not a video on infantrymen capabilities and tasks. That's a later video, something else that we're going to dive into. But what I'm interested in is some of the tools and equipment that a DM would carry. That is a combination of infantryman tools, but then the DM tools that help you meet or exceed the needs for observation, accurate fire, and camouflage. And I don't necessarily want to spread everything out here on the ground and start losing parts. Why don't you say we run up to the shop and use a clean table to talk about some of those tools? All right, guys, we want to take just a moment and thank some of the sponsors that make content like this possible for you to enjoy every single weekend. And the first sponsor of today's video is Onyx Off-Road. Now, regardless of what specialties you actually have or what you bring to a team or to your family, having the ability to know where you are in the world and the best route to get from point A to point B. And a really good way to practice that is by off-roading, going out, whether it's on dirt bikes or maybe even mountain bikes or a Forerunner or a truck, whatever you have. But if you have the access on your phone to be able to download maps so that you don't have to have cell phone service or Starlink or anything like that, to pull up exactly where you are and map where you're going. You can overlay satellite features so you can see what the sunshade's doing, what the weather's been doing over the past 2 weeks in that specific area. Then go check out Onyx Off-Road. We do have a discount code. Link is in the description. Next up, guys, we have Steel Industries, one of our favorite brands out there. They've been sponsors of the channel for a long time. Not only do they sell night vision, they also have helmets, whether you're looking for bump or ballistic, or you're wanting to have a Wilcox G24 mount. Maybe you just want some extra ears that go onto your helmet or you're wearing without a helmet. Go check out Steel Industries. Link is in the description for all items that are not on sale. Now, I know that night vision is super popular these days, but the other side of that argument is thermal. And the common misconception is that all thermal is really expensive. Well, DNT Optics is another sponsor of this video, and they just so happen to offer some really well-priced thermal optics, just like this one right here. So go check out DNT if you're looking for some competitively priced thermal. With that, let's get back to the video. All right, equipment. Now, clearly, if you have the roles of being a rifleman as well as a DM, there's got to be some tools and gadgets that go along with it. Before we get into the tools that support a DM, can you just briefly walk us through what, at least on your kit, would be applied to being a rifleman?
Yeah, absolutely. The majority of this kit is actually just normal rifleman kit. So when you look at those kind of categories, you have your ammunition, somewhere between 6 to 10 magazines. The only caveat I would make for the DM on that is you might want to have a couple 20 rounders. Just helps with getting into certain positions, especially in the prone. You have your medical supplies, and then you have your sustainment and communications. All that stuff that's the vast majority of this kit that I have, is just to help fulfill the role of a rifleman in a team.
Okay, and when we were talking offline, or before the cameras were rolling, you were saying that about 70% of the gear that you're carrying in your, this is a Spiritus, what model LBE is this?
Yeah, so this is a 34 Alpha from Spiritus with their LBV expander kit.
So it's a lot of kit that you're carrying here,
Yeah.
but even still, only 70% of it would be applied to being the rifleman. The 30% is more of the DM role. Is that right?
That's about right.
Okay, let's start with observation, since we stressed that observation is a really crucial component of being a DM. What and everything that you're doing here applies to just observation?
The largest magnification thing that I have is actually going to be the scope of my rifle. So we'll touch a little bit more on rifles in a bit, but that's a huge piece of the observation tool. There are some other things that I carry on my kit for observation, and a theme that you'll see throughout all of the kit that we talk about today is everything's going to have multiple purposes. As a DM and also being a rifleman, you can't really afford to have kit on you that's going to be just solely for one role. So finding multi-uses for everything is super important. The first thing that I carry on me is going to be a binocular, just like this little Vortex one right here. It's 8 times magnification, and it has a mil reticle inside as well as a ranging tool. So it serves 2 functions. It can give me some magnification for observing. It can also help me range targets passively without emitting any kind of signature. And then the other thing I have with me is a laser rangefinder. This is just a SIG one. I think it's about 4x magnification, and it's a laser rangefinder, so it's a more active way of ranging a target. Both of these aid in observation and also aid in ranging. And I may not carry both of them. I might decide to just carry, if I'm in an environment where I'm worried about that signature, I might just carry the binocular.
Sure.
But if I'm in an environment where I'm not worried about that, the laser rangefinder is a faster way to get the range.
Right. Okay, so the optic you mentioned is going to be your highest magnification that you're often carrying.
Yeah.
I think a common misconception, and I had this as well, when talking about the sniper role or even a DM role, is, well, then I've got to have binoculars, and I've got to have maybe an extra tripod for my spotting scope. And nowhere on here or in your pack that we'll talk about as well, do you have any of those like massive chunky 15 times magnification binos or a 40 time spotting scope? Why are you not carrying those things when this is kind of your role?
Is another differentiator between a sniper and a DM is a sniper, if you're sitting out, and to be clear, I'm not a sniper, have worked with them plenty though, and when you're going out for a sniper mission, you're loading out your team and it's a shooter and a spotter, you're loading them out for that task. And you can afford to take things like a spotting scope or a big set of binos, because that's going to be your sole mission, is to go out and do your sniper mission, long range engagements and long range observation. In this context, and especially in a civilian context, you don't have those kind of set mission parameters. So having equipment on you that is very flexible, that's lightweight, that's small, is really crucial to that.
All right, the next thing that we talked about was precision fire. So talk me through an accurized 5.56 carbine and what it is that you're looking for a DM.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is obviously kind of the heart of the DM role, is your DM rifle, and a lot of the things that are set up on it are going to be the same capabilities that you have in a general purpose rifle. So like just starting at the front, having a suppressor as a DM. Suppressors are awesome. We all love suppressors. It's great. They're easier to get these days. As a DM, I think it's really important to have a suppressor, just because you may be firing from a hidden position, and any kind of signature reduction that you can do is going to be super helpful in staying hidden. As well as having a way to shield your optic from things like mirage. So like you have a fabric suppressor wrap. I have a carbon fiber one from ModTac. It's super important if you're in a DM role. Those follow-up shots we talked about earlier, you're gonna deal with suppressor mirage more than you would otherwise.
Yeah. Which, for those who don't know, suppressor mirage, your gun gets really hot when you're shooting, let's say more than 20 rounds, and as your optic is trying to view probably a small target at a decent distance away, I'm talking even 100, 300 yards, as the heat is coming off of your suppressor, it is starting to shift the image that you're seeing because you're looking through the heat, kind of like looking through sand or asphalt on a super hot day. You see that image shaking, and while that's happening, your reticle is shaking on the image just because the picture is being warped through the temperature coming off of your suppressor. So trying to mitigate that as much as possible, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And so moving back on the rifle here, an IR device, if you're running night vision and you may be trying to save weight on your DM rifle, being as they are a little longer, a little heavier, a lot of people like to try to forego a night vision device, but this is going to be your rifle. Like, you need to be able to be capable with this rifle in every type of circumstance you might find yourself in. So if you're running a LAM, you should have one on your DM rifle as well.
When you say LAM,
yeah, laser aiming module. So this is IR laser, IR illumination for shooting with night vision. Same thing goes with a weapon light. Just like any rifle should have a weapon light. Getting back to the more DM specific stuff is the scope. And I'll touch on the scope for a minute here because it is very important. Like I mentioned, this is probably your highest magnification piece of equipment that you have with you. A lot of folks try to get by with an LPVO. And I'll tell you, as someone who deployed twice with a 2 to 10, 2 to 10 is not enough magnification.
Dang it.
Yeah, sorry. What I would recommend, and this is not just for shooting, yes, you can shoot a pretty good distance with a 2 to 10 and hit man-sized targets on an open range. When it comes to observation, that's where it really falls short. You need to be able to not only see targets, you need to be able to see partial targets, you need to be able to identify the equipment that person is carrying, what they're wearing, what they might look like. So those are the kind of details that you need to be able to see through your scope, which again is your primary observation device. And so I recommend 2 to 2.5 times magnification for every 100 yards that you want to be able to observe and engage.
So for the longest time, we were hearing coming out of the military, at least you want 1 times magnification for every 100 yards. Mm-hmm. So that technically would mean if I'm shooting 1,000 yards, I only need 10 times magnification, or 3 at 300. And I am not a professional shooter. I've only started to enjoy some mid to long range shooting myself recently. And I can tell you right now, I would not want to be shooting 500 yards at 5 times magnification. So that makes a lot more sense to me just after doing a little bit of it myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And once you start trying to observe things, and especially people who may be trying to hide from you, who are also trying to reduce their signature, being able to pick those details out, even at closer ranges, even when you're observing something that's 300 to 400 yards away, being able to see those kind of details, notice things like the shine and the color and different variables when you're trying to observe things, having that magnification is super important. Along with the optic stack, we have a top dot here. You can also run a 45 dot if that is more your speed. I definitely prefer a top dot for shooting with passive under night vision, shooting with a gas mask on. Also being able to look at a target through your dot and then dropping into your scope to find it. It can be really handy if you kind of see where you want to aim. It can be hard to find it in your scope sometimes if you're magged in. So just putting your dot on it and then dropping it into your optic is a really quick way to get on target.
That makes sense. So then here's the other question that I have for you. I think a lot of people are thinking, all right, I need an 18 times optic, probably need like a 22 inch barrel for my 5.56. Mm-hmm. I have an 18 inch and it's heavy and it's a little long, but it's doable. What are you running? So
I'm running a 16-inch barrel in this, and for me, the way when I talk to people about building an SPR or a DM rifle, I recommend 16 inches if you're going to have a suppressor. If you're in a state that you can't have a suppressor or that's not in your budget, there's nothing wrong with an 18-inch unsuppressed. I mean, might as well get a little bit of extra velocity. The velocity difference between 18 inches and 16 inches is not really a factor when we're talking about the ranges that we're talking about and the roll that we're talking about. So having that additional weight savings, having a little bit shorter package is just a lot more balanced in my opinion. Like this gun has a Criterion barrel. It's exceptionally fast. I'm shooting somewhere around 2,700 feet per second with 77 grain.
Nice.
So yeah, that's the barrel length that I personally would go with.
Okay. Now you mentioned that 5.56 is the most common caliber in the United States, but that doesn't mean that every 5.56 round is made the same. So what are you doing as far as ammo selection itself?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of 77 grain OTM for this kind of role. I think it delivers the best performance. And at a price point these days that is, you can buy it in quantity and train with it. So that's my choice. I will say though, it is very important that you have dope built out for other common grain weights. So what I have on my rifle are dope cards that are removable on Velcro. So I have it on here for 77 grain, but I also have one built out for 55 grain, M193 clone type ammunition, and then I also have one for 62 grain green tip.
The other thing that both of us have on our rifles are a form of a bubble level to actually tell us when our reticle is level with the earth. But after shooting enough, you start to figure out that getting level in a three-dimensional space is not always that easy. So what are you doing in order to build some stability into the weapon system itself?
So starting on the rifle itself, first thing is a bipod. And there's a lot you can go into with bipods. There's different models, there's different pros and cons to each. I like to make sure I have a bipod that can rotate on its axis and unlock and rotate that way in off positions. You can keep the gun level. And the next things I would actually always have on me, I have one clipped to my kit, is a sandbag or a sand sock to stabilize either the front or the rear of the rifle, depending on what the situation calls for and what position you're in. And then the last piece is going to be the tripod, which I think is super important to this kind of kit.
And all of those things are not necessarily items that the common rifleman would be carrying.
Right.
And if someone looks at a rifle like this or the kit, that it's, wow, you have bipods and you have a sandbag and you have a tripod. Those are definitely bits and pieces that not everyone needs. But for this role, it seems fairly crucial.
It is crucial, and also take into consideration, a lot of that stuff is, like for example, having a quick detach on your bipod is awesome. These guns are already getting a little bit chunky and heavy, so being able to quickly detach your bipod if you know you're going to be walking for the next 3 or 4 miles.
Dump pouch
put it in a dump pouch, clip it to your kit somehow. Same thing with the sand socks. This is not stuff that you have to keep attached to your rifle, but again, it goes back to that scaling and that flexibility of the roll to be able to attach those things to your gun when you need them.
Nice. All right, before we leave talking about stability, you guys have to remember that spending money on things in order to get stable is not going to be as effective as learning how to be stable in any position that you have. You can literally take a sock and fill it with dirt and practice becoming really stable in any shooting position. And that is going to outperform someone who spends gobs of money and doesn't practice using those tools. So before you go spend tons of money, learn how to get really good, stable shooting positions, and then you can start to apply some of these tools and allow them to benefit you, not hinder you. Okay, finally, the last thing that we talked about as far as some responsibilities that you have is camouflage and concealment. But again, you've got to carry this stuff. So what is it that you're carrying while still being able to be an effective infantryman in regards to camo and concealment?
There's a couple of items that I would say are pretty key and very easily packable. Stuff that you can bring with you that's not going to impede your movement, it's not going to take up a bunch of room. You don't need to have a full sniper ghillie setup in order to be camouflaged. When we were out in the woods a little bit earlier, setting up some hasty hide sites, you can become virtually invisible with just a few pieces of equipment and then using your creativity and the natural vegetation around you.
You had referenced before that there was a percentage on how much man-made equipment you want to be incorporating as opposed to the natural vegetation around you.
So again, actually ties right back into the amount of kit that we're carrying for the DM role, that 70-30 rule. The same rule applies to when you're setting up a hide site or trying to camouflage yourself. You want to have about 70% natural vegetation from the area around you and only use about 30% of items that you brought with you to help you create that hasty hide site.
Gotcha. Okay, so with that in mind, we were using these a ton. Talk to me about the importance of pruning shears.
Yeah, so when it comes to the camouflage and stuff and all the gear that comes with it, the two most important pieces that you can have with you are a set of pruning shears and then a bunch of hair ties. With these two items, you can create a very effective hide site just by using the natural vegetation and having a way to tie it either to itself or to your tripod, to your rifle, to your pack, to you. These two items will carry you a lot further than you may think. And it's just a matter of your creativity, getting some practice doing it. Luckily, it is the cheapest, easiest thing to practice. You can literally go out in the woods with your friends and just play a game of adult hide and seek, where you go and create a little hide site,
camouflage yourself as best as possible, and then let your friends come by and critique you and see what's the first thing. Like the first thing I said when Drew wrote up to us earlier in our little hide sites was, what's the first thing you see when you look at me? And just see what that first thing is. Whether it's the tip of your suppressor, or it's your scope's ring, which is black, and a circle, which is not natural. Just have someone come by and point out what's the first thing you see about you, and then try to fix that thing. And then keep that in mind for next time you're building one. Try to make sure that you're camouflaging that thing.
Nice. So then with the hair ties, you're not just tying things down to your rifle, you can be tying things to, I guess, another tree that could be offset in front of you and you want to fill some space.
Yep.
Or even on tripod legs.
Yeah.
And another thing that we had talked about that was off camera, that we've been talking a lot recently, if you haven't learned, because I've been learning a ton from Jonathan, but you were even talking about using a tripod and setting this up for potentially even some anti-thermal capabilities as well.
Yeah, definitely. The tripod is a piece of kit that some people may assume is too specialized for a DM to have, or it's too bulky or too big. And it is bulky and it is big. But regardless, I think it is an absolutely crucial piece to have for the DM. Two major capabilities the tripod brings you are different positions that you can put yourself in a hide site. You may need to be in an urban hide site in a room and see up through a window. And that's gonna give you the elevation that you need to do that, or over the mound of a hill. It also provides camouflage and concealment if you set it up in a way that you can drape over a poncho or a tarp or some kind of cover. You can create a hide site using your tripod legs as a structure, be underneath it, and that also reduces your thermal signature from above. So if you have a thermal drone that's looking for you, they're not gonna see you because you're underneath a covering, and your tripod is keeping that covering off of your body, which is eliminating that heat transfer.
So other than things like scrim on your helmet, pruning shears, obviously there's other things like wearing gloves to cover up your hands, or face paint that would typically be associated with the common infantryman. But then you have like a net gaiter.
So things like face paint, but things also like net gaiters. If you have pale skin, you're gonna probably want to cover that up with some kind of covering, whether that be paint or something that's a little bit easier to take on and off, like a net gaiter or a balaclava. Super handy to have for, again, multiple purposes, right? So that's gonna help provide you some warmth if it's cold out. It's also gonna help reduce the signature of your skin, making sure your sleeves are rolled down, making sure you have gloves on. All those kind of things can be really helpful, just little things you can do.
And finally, keeping the mindset of a multi-tool, you did something really cool with your Mega Mover, which is a litter. We just did a video on that you can go back and watch. Jonathan was thinking about something.
Yeah, so Paul had talked about using the Mega Mover, and he had cut the lining out of his so that it was a little bit lighter and easier to carry, which is great, I mean, for reducing weight. But what I do with mine is I just painted it. And so now what I can do is I can roll this out. I can use this as a tarp like we talked about over the tripod. I could use it as a shooting mat if I need to use it for that, if I need to cover the ground that I'm laying on, or just provide some additional, like reducing my backdrop, whatever I need to do, I can do with this. So I painted it green on one side, I painted it brown on the other side for multi-seasonal use. And it's just another way to use something that you might already be carrying, but give it a dual purpose, make it justify its weight and space in your kit.
Yeah, which comes back to what I am learning a lot is that the creativity aspect, not just in the DM role, but in the creativity aspect is probably the most important thing that you can learn. Whether you're talking about field medicine or having to learn how to hide in a hasty hide site. If you can understand what issues need to be tackled, then you can think on your own and figure out, man, if I just carry pruning shears, I can build myself a pretty decent hide site. You don't have to go buy. I know we're showing you a lot of expensive equipment. You really don't need all this stuff in order to become proficient.
If I wanted to go be ready for a hide site and I was on a budget, the three things I would buy would be a set of pruning shears that you can get from anywhere, a bag of hair ties that you can get from anywhere, and then a sniper veil. These you can buy on Amazon. They don't need to be fancy or from some tactical brand. Just buy a sniper veil, spray paint it if you want to change the color of it. with just these 3 tools, you can make a very good hasty hide site. The ones that we built outside today were literally just built with those 3 things.
Cool, guys. Well, we talked about the importance of observation, camo, and precision fire, and then also the tools that go into making all those things happen. There's a lot more content that could really blend all of these things together, but if you've been paying attention over the past few months, we've been hitting wave tops as far as tools, how to build dope cards, concealment, so on and so forth. And this is a form of bringing all those parts and pieces together. And the thing is, there's a term which is brilliance in the basics. The people who are excellent at the foundational level are the people who often exceed the standards. So we are trying to just start with some of those basic principles. Jonathan, thank you so much for being here and also educating Drew, Nick, and I offline as well.
Yeah.
For people who have questions, are you available to the general public if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so Havoc21 on X is my handle. That's mainly where I'm at. I also write articles on there. I do post articles to my website. It's havoc21.com if you want to read some of the backlog stuff I've talked about in the past. But yeah, if you want to reach out, if you have any questions about the DM role or things that you should consider, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Right on. Well, guys, with that, thank you so much for watching, and thank you to Patreon to get first access to us. Yeah, actually, you were one of our first Patreon members.
I was, yeah.
Thank you for
one
that.
of the OGs.
Yeah, man. And look now where you are.
No, I know, right?
On lowly little DC. Well, anyway, thank you very much to Patreon. You guys get first access to us as well as first access to the content before it drops on YouTube, and it's ad-free. With that, if you need anything, Drew's email is drew@dirtycivilian.com. Sorry about that. And I guess we'll see you next Saturday.
One hit. All right, Kenny, that was a little bad.
That was a little bad.
Hold on. This was Kenny. This is what you did. You go. Because I was paying attention to my watch. Kenny, you literally went like this. Because I was thinking about my watch, not dying.